Today we continue our off-season plan series looking at the 13th ranked team from the NHL's regular season, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Kyle Dubas is expected to be an incredibly busy general manager. What moves will he make this off-season? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now in case you're new to this series, we're doing a dedicated video for all 31 NHL teams, outlining their off-season plans, what they should be looking to do. Well, now that we're officially kind of getting to the full swing here of the off-season, we're first going to recap last season, look at how things went, take a look at their cap space, what expiring contracts they have for RFAs and UFAs, and what trades or signings we should expect them to make here soon to get ready for the next season. So let's dive in first up with a recap of the 1920 season for the Maple Leafs. So the Leafs finished with a record of 36, 25, and 9 for 81 points. So obviously they had a pretty solid regular season, but couldn't really make any improvements on where they finished in the standings. Of course, the last few years they've been kindly, for the most part, the third best team in the Atlantic behind Tampa and Boston. They did technically make the playoffs. Of course, with the play-in series, they had to do battle with the Columbus Blue Jackets, where they unfortunately lost the 5-game series to Columbus. And they technically missed the first round of the 2020 NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs. I mean, Columbus was able to shut their offense down while being very stingy defensively as well. So certainly was not a great matchup for the Leafs, but they certainly have reason to be optimistic about the future. Now let's look at some of the other team statistics from that season. We see that they scored 238 goals while allowing 227, so that's a plus 11 rating. Overall as a team, the offense was great. The goals against, certainly too many though. As we know, no big surprise, the Leafs need to get better defensively, which is going to be a large part of our conversation here today for what moves they're going to make. Taking a look at their special teams, the Maple Leafs had a pretty solid power play, the 6th best in the NHL, 23.1%. And they can really load up with Matthews and Tavares, Marner, Nylander, Riley. Like, they have a really solid power play, so no issues there. The penalty kill could certainly be better, but it wasn't one of the worst in the league. 77.7, 21st best, but typically to be a solid cup contending team, you do usually have to rank a little higher and be at least around an 80% mark, so certainly could stand to make some improvements in that regard here as well. Now let's take a look at where things stand with the Maple Leafs salary cap situation as of today. Take a look at what contracts are ready to expire and what moves and trades they will likely make here once we're officially into the high gear of the offseason. So, of course, no big surprise here from CapFriendly.com. The Leafs don't really have a lot of wiggle room. They only have $6.1 million. That does leave 18 players signed for next season. So we're looking at signing anywhere from 4 to 5 players, depending on how many players they want to carry on their active roster. So now let's take a look at the contract situation. Who do they have for restricted free agents, unrestricted free agents, and discuss how these contracts are going to be affected here moving forward. UFAs, I think there's a decent chance that none of these players return. I mean, we could be wrong there, but there's a possibility at least. We know that Tyson Barrie and Cody Ceci almost 100% will not be returning. I'd be quite surprised if either player re-signs with the Leafs. There's just no space, and I don't really think they're the best fit for the team either. You have Kyle Clifford and Jason Spezza, a couple of veteran guys. There is a possibility. I won't completely say that there's no chance they come back. I just don't think there's anywhere near a guarantee that they do. I mean, based on what we've heard about Kyle Clifford, I think there's a pretty good chance he does sign somewhere else via free agency. Now, he's a player that Kyle Dubas knows extremely well. Dubas was a player agent before he was a GM a long time ago, and he was Kyle Clifford's agent before. They know each other from the junior ranks as well. So a player he's very, very familiar with, and I'm sure he would probably be interested in keeping around if they can make it work, but it's just going to be challenging. Same with Jason Spezza. I think he got better as the year went on, was given a little bit more better role with Sheldon Keefe than he was through Mike Babcock. And I could see maybe he could return. Obviously, if he does, it would be another one-year deal at league minimum. And I think there's a chance that could happen, but I'm not sure how the Leafs feel about that, and they may or may not be able to squeeze things in. It's going to depend on what other moves they make and how that affects their cap, because Kyle Dubas is going to have to be extremely creative with some of the things that are potentially rumored to happen here. At their RFAs, you have guys like Ilya Mikheyev, who certainly has made a good impression on the Leafs and their fans. I do think that he gets signed. I mean, I don't think he's going to be getting a mega deal in any way, but I can see there probably being a short bridge deal for a couple of years, obviously with a bit of a raise over what he was making before. You have players like Dennis Malgin, Freddie Gauthier, Evan Rodrigues and Travis Dermott. Now, Rodrigues was a player picked up in a Kasperi Kapanen trade. I can see him coming back, but he may not get a qualifying offer, though, from the Maple Leafs, because his qualifying offer might be a little bit too much because I believe it's around $2 million. They are probably interested in having him be one of the options for the bottom six, but I don't think they're going to want to pay that much. And I'm not sure that he's really going to get that much money from any team. So it is possible he could not be qualified, go unrestricted free agent, but then re-sign for a lesser amount. That is a possibility, and I can see that maybe happening. Comes to Malgin and Gauthier, I would think there's a chance they'll get a qualifying offer, but by no means is it a guarantee. Like they have a lot of forwards under contract. They're obviously their bottom six are all going to have to be very cheap deals to make things work money-wise. They could be back, but again, there's a possibility that they could either look to move these players or possibly not be qualified. We'll have to see. I'm not sure how much of a market there would be for either of these guys. Now, when it comes to Travis Dermott, I do think that he likely does get signed, but I do think there is a possibility that he could be traded because they do have much more of an abundance of left shot D than right shot D, but they could maybe between him or newly signed Mikko Lehtinen could possibly play the right side. It's that's an experiment they could go with. I think they like Dermott. But what we saw in the playoffs, though, kind of showed he's not ready to play in the top four. At least in my opinion, he's not. He is a guy who's still relatively young, still learning, still growing. So I could see longer term that potential's there. But they also have younger defensemen like Rasmus Sandin, Timothy Liljegren. Then, of course, they signed Lehtinen out of Europe. So they're going to want to give opportunities to those guys, too. So there is a possibility that Dermott gets moved, but there's also a good possibility that he signs a small bridge deal and sticks around, and maybe he has to play the offside for him. I'm not sure. We'll see, but the Leafs are certainly fully expected to tinker with the blue line, which we're going to get into here more in the next segment, which essentially will be what are the burning questions for the Leafs? What are their needs heading into this offseason? What are the rumored trades or signings that they're expected to make? Now, let's start with the blue line since that's where we finished here with Travis Dermott. Like I said, we're likely going to have Tyson Barrie, Cody Ceci not return. There is a chance that Dermott gets moved. That does not leave a lot of returning blue liners. So you're going to have guys like Jake Muzzin. You're going to have Morgan Riley. Obviously, Justin Hall, I think fair to say, improved a fair bit last year. He could be a trade bait as well, but I think Hall probably does stick around. They still have Marty Marinson, who's really an extra depth piece at best, but he's technically under contract, and they're probably going to have a couple of new defensemen come in either via trade or free agency. Now, the big fish that they're probably looking at is Blues captain Alex Pietrangelo. Can they pull off bringing in another big-time NHL player home to Toronto, where he grew up in the Toronto area as a child and spent most of his life before getting into professional hockey? So going to be an interesting situation. The Blues captain in the team in St. Louis are rumored right now to be having a lot of contract negotiations, and they're not going well. They're not really willing to put in much for signing bonuses or trade protection, and the Leafs certainly would. They have a lot of cash as a team, and they're not afraid to spend it on that upfront guaranteed money and the bonuses. So I think they would stand a good chance to get him if he indeed does go to free agency. That just means they're going to have to cut in other ways to make the necessary space, because obviously, like I said, they only have $6 million in space to start with. They have some other players that need to sign here as well, even if they're all close to league minimum between, say, $700,000 to $1 million. That's still, it's going to eat away at a lot of that. So if PetrAngelo was brought in, you're going to see 2 to 3 other players or one of the big guys go out. I think Dubas probably would be not wanting to trade a Marner or Nylander. I don't think Tavares or Matthews have any chance of being traded at all. I would put a small chance on Marner or Nylander. I don't think either of them are going anywhere either. But out of the big 4 forwards, they certainly would be more likely than Matthews or Tavares. Now, you could make an argument that the Marner deal is more tradable, more value, and I think you could say the same for Nylander, depending on what the return would be and how you look at things. But they could also package up a number of other players like a Johnson and Kerfoot together and maybe cut money in other ways to make it happen. And I don't know exactly what Pietrangelo is going to want for money. It's rumored right now that the Blues are offering him $8 million and it's not enough. But at the same time, it could be more about bonuses and stuff too. So if they have to pay him close to $9 million, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. As much as it would satisfy what they're looking for a right side D who can play that top pair, at the same time, they're going to have to cut so much other stuff. Is it really the best move? It's It's a hard question to answer just because of the money involved, not because of the player. I think the player would be awesome for them and would be exactly what they're looking for. He brings that leadership. He's got that Stanley Cup pedigree to his name now. He knows what it's like to battle through and win a cup. And he's got tons of experience. So it'd be great for them, just really difficult to pull it off from a financial standpoint. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Should the Leafs go hard after PetrAngelo, and would you be okay with signing him at $8.5, $9 million, or maybe even a little more if it means losing 2 or 3 other roster players and possibly weakening other areas of the team? Now, of course, there's a lot of talk about a goalie upgrade or a goalie trade. There's a lot of concern over the future of Frederik Andersen. Now, this has 2 reasons attached to it. One is because of his contract, which is by far the biggest reason here. Not to knock Frederik Andersen on his play. I think he's been a really good goaltender for the Leafs. But at the same time, they have to look at the longer-term outlook. He's only 1 year left. He's going to prove to be very expensive and difficult to sign beyond the current season. Now, of course, you could also look at this from an upgrade standpoint because Andersen is getting to that stage of his career where, it's a little riskier to sign him to a long-term deal. When you're getting north of 30, and your play hasn't been terrible by any means. He's been good, but it should expect to drop off, and he has had his moments, and the biggest moments of Leaf games where he has not come up big at the right time, and that seems to be where he gets criticized. So I think the Leafs only make a trade if they are satisfied that they can be better with another goaltender between the pipes as the main starting guy. They've been linked to Matt Murray. Of course, Matt Murray, very familiar with Dubas from their days in junior. Another, situation where Kyle Dubas is going after players he's worked with before. So that wouldn't be a huge shock, but again, going to depend on the price tag. What do they need to give up to the Penguins to make the deal happen? Do they trade that first-round pick back that they got in the Kapanen trade? That could be a possibility because it's rumored that the Penguins want a first-round pick for Murray, and then what would the contract look like to get the RFA goalie signed? And you're going to want him signed probably for at least 3 to 4 years to really consider making that deal, because why would you only take a short-term deal, welcome to free agency, and then you could have Andersen gone, Murray gone? It just wouldn't be a situation that really would make sense for the Leafs. But they're rumored to be looking at other goalies as well. You've got Darcy Kuemper in the trade market. You've got Matt Murray. From free agency standpoint, there's lots of goalies out there that are going to be relatively solid guys. You can throw even Ben Bishop into the mix from a trade perspective, because I'm not convinced yet that Dallas lets Hudobin walk in free agency. He's going to be a tricky guy for them to sign. His value just went through the roof because of the playoffs, and Bishop's under contract for a more reasonable amount here for the next 2 or 3 years. So, you can throw him in the mix too. Not sure he'd be the best fit for the Leafs, but I'm sure that the Dallas Stars will at least consider moving him after this playoff run is over. So a lot of decisions on the goalie market, but there is a real possibility that Frederik Andersen gets traded. Another really appealing option for Andersen to go to another team is that where his signing bonus has already been paid, he comes with a $5 million cap hit, but he's only actually making $1 million this year. So for any teams that are worried about their spending bottom line, but not so much about the cap, he would be perfect for them because he can take up the cap space, but not on the actual pocketbook. So he's going to have a lot of appeal for teams to make the acquisition if the Leafs go down that road. And I do think right now I'd probably put it at least a 50% chance that the Leafs trade Freddie, find another goalie, whether it be through trade or free agency, and kind of go that rate. But obviously, they can't have somebody who's making a whole lot more than him. Ideally, less would be preferable in this situation. As I mentioned as well, they have a first-round pick from the Pittsburgh Penguins that they acquired in that Kasperi Kapanen trade. Do they hold the pick or do they trade it? It would be great for them in a way to get a great young player because this is a very deep draft. So they could get a great prospect for the future who would be probably a year or two out. But at the same time, the Leafs are in win-now mode. They have so much money tied up in their big 4 forwards. If they get another big-time player, whether it be an upgrade in goal, with a longer-term deal, or PetrAngelo, they're going to have to be in win-now mode. So I don't think they're going to be overly worried about this draft, and that pick could be used as currency to make another acquisition here. Like I said, maybe if they do go after a guy like Murray, that goes back to Pittsburgh for that. That wouldn't be a shocking trade, but like I said, I'm not sure exactly who Dubas has his eye on to possibly be the next goalie for the Maple Leafs here. But I do think there's a pretty good chance that pick gets traded. As far as prospects go, you have to wonder if Nick Robertson can make a full-time spot next year for the Leafs. He had a good showing in the playoffs. Didn't play consistently, but it showed enough that he could play at that level. And it wouldn't be surprising, especially where he's on an ELC, that they need players like him on the cheaper end of things who can jump into their lineup and give him, a few years at that ELC level before they have to worry about paying him more money. A lot could happen with other players and other changes before they have to consider what his raise is going to be coming out of that contract. So certainly lots of questions for the Leafs, but if they go after a guy like PetrAngelo and they try to upgrade their goaltending, we've already seen Kapanen gone. We very well could see Johnson gone, Kerfoot gone, PetrAngelo's in that mix. Like I said, you throw in Travis Dermott as well as another possibility. So they're clearly going to have a lot of players leaving town for potentially one or two big names coming in. Like I said, for free agents, you're going to see Barry gone, CC gone, possibly Spezza. It's hard to say. Those RFAs are questionable as well. So I think we're going to see pretty high turnover, especially if we see a big move in Toronto like is being rumored right now. So let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think are the best moves for Dubas to make for this team to have them a better chance at making a deeper playoff run and having a shot at a Stanley Cup in the near future? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.